more than 25 years in broadcast news, and it was a great experience. I did have to give up something, mainly my hair, but what I learned there for the last 19 years, I've taken to the executive suite and worked with executives not to teach them spin, not to teach them evasion, but to teach them how to get messaging through the media by being responsive to questions, but on their terms. So what I want to share with you is some messaging through the media examples tonight, but let me stop here and just say, I knew Narcy for more than 15 years. I don't think I've met a more generous, kind, well-connected human being in my life. And if there is a heaven, they're getting a real lesson in networking right now. He was just phenomenal. Okay, let's move along. Who goes back to 1980s? Do you remember what happened in the 1980s with terrorism in the Mediterranean area? Bombs went off at the Rome airport. American military were targeted. There was the Achille Lauro cruise ship in the Mediterranean. Little man in a wheelchair pushed off. Okay. The result was Americans in great numbers stopped traveling to that part of the world. And Greece felt it particularly hard because tourism is their number one industry. So the Greek Tourism Board went on a proactive campaign, multimedia, to start talking to Americans and making us at least reconsider and come back to Greece. Now, this is a piece of video from Good Morning America, as you see, and David Hartman was the interviewer, not a hardcore journalist, a grade B actor, really, and he was co-hosting with Joan London at the time. He's about to interview the representative of the Greek Tourism Board in New York City. This gentleman's an American, a Greek American, and this is a volunteer job, as far as I know, that he was doing. This piece of video is relatively short, but I'd like to get your reaction to it. And by the way, Kambiz, the videographer there, this camera does not put 10 pounds on me, does it? Okay. He told me, and I want you to interact with me, but before you do, hit the button in front of you. There are microphones, I think, right in front of you, or for every two people. Hit the button, and I'll try to repeat what you've said so it's picked up for the camera, okay? So here's what was happening on Good Morning America. They were looking at organizations that were going through crises and how they were handling them from a media perspective, but mainly marketing and PR. Now, who do you think watches Good Morning America? Yeah, well, women. Okay, it can be a housewife, which is frankly, I think, the hardest job in the world, especially raising kids. But it could be professional women preparing for work, women who work in the home, professionals who, work out of their homes, whatever. But I would say the last figure I heard, about 70% of the audience for these morning shows is female. So what do you think females want to know about Greece? Right. And ladies, how many of you make the travel planning for your plans, vacations? Okay? All right. So a great opportunity, right? A big audience, millions, proportionately in his favor, female, and here's how it went.
address, which takes the secret six on the back, so I would increase safer than staying home. Second, that's the message you want, also get out of the media. And that's being done now. The second prong of our attack is the advertising campaign. And every show is basically not to address the question of safety or terrorism, but simply to show famous personalities going to Greece. These people are not Greeks, they're all non-Greeks, they were not paid for this, and the commercial really is a demonstration of affection and solidarity with Greeks. Yes.
Okay. How do you feel about his message? Did he convince you to reconsider? No? Okay, use your mic. Why didn't you? What happened? What happened? Where did he go wrong? Combative, you said? Okay, what else?
Scripted?
Well, yeah, somewhat. Maybe not as prepared, though. Maybe scripted, but not as prepared as he should have been. Okay, yes, sir.
He never responded to the basic question, how are you going to react to Americans' attitude about terrorism?
Right.
Just said that, it's safe.
Well, that's right. He didn't respond, but he certainly didn't respond in the right way. Let's break this down, okay? First of all, he tells David Hartman, you're wrong. Everybody hasn't been driven away. We talked about 18 to 20% of Europeans are coming back, okay? But this is an American TV show, okay? So you're stupid because you just don't understand. You all have the erroneous perception out there. Okay, so he's doing a good job of really getting on your side and making friends. And then, what a wonderful word to use when we're talking about terrorism. A two-pronged attack. And then this statement, which I find, you're safer in Greece than you are at home. Now, and you can believe us, the credibility that is not instilled in this presentation is unbelievable. And then he goes one step further, and sir, this is what you reacted to. We're so sensitive to your concerns, we chose to ignore them. Okay? The point of this is that you've got to know who your audience is. Before you develop your messaging, you've got to define your audience and who in the audience you want to target. And then you decide what you want to say to them. And in his case, he could have left a very strong, gut-level, emotional message, and he did. I'm not going to Greece. Because they're talking about a two-pronged attack. His interview here, his message delivery would have been fine for a marketing trade publication. But in this case, not only did he fail, but he got free airplay of a TV commercial. And that audience, as far as that audience was concerned, that commercial's value was completely erased. Free airtime for him, free airtime for a commercial, and he did just a terrible job. By the way, what do you think his day job was? He was just volunteer doing this. What do you think his day job is? Based on, yes, that's he is a lawyer. As a matter of fact, I worked with two groups about 2.5 years apart, completely unrelated to each other, and one person in each of the groups knew him personally. A litigator. How would you like him to choose your jury after his performance here? I don't think I would. All right, let's move on. Philip Condit was the CEO of Boeing for a few years, and under his leadership, Boeing went through some very, very bad times. They got a hold of some documents from Lockheed Martin that were confidential they shouldn't have had. They were really getting beaten like a drum by Airbus in the commercial airline business. And then they had this vice president, Michael Sears, who had hired Darlene Druyan. Although Darlene had not started yet with Boeing, she was in the Pentagon, she was the Air Force's chief person in getting business. And she was directing a lot of business to Boeing after he had signed her up for a six-figure job. By the way, her daughter and son-in-law also worked at Boeing. Okay? Well, Senate got a hold of this, and Darlene and Michael never worked together unless they were making license plates in jail, because that's where they showed up. They went to jail. So in comes Harry Stonecipher. And Harry has a real cleanup job to do, both in the commercial and in the defense industries. And he starts to turn the company around. Boeing starts to eclipse Airbus in the commercial end, and he was really improving the image of Boeing at the Pentagon, #1 client, okay, as well as other similar organizations internationally, because they sell their products worldwide. So Stonecipher did a good job, a very good job, but as you can see, it didn't last long because Harry had an affair, and the board forced him to resign. Now, that may sound cut and dried to you. Of course, CEO has an affair, he has to resign. But watch this. This is Lou Platt, who was chairman of the board at the time. And Lou goes on with Neil Cavuto, who's a very tough interviewer and a very savvy guy on Fox. His show is #1, has been for years, and it comes on at 4 o'clock Eastern Time, just as the market closes. So consider this. What's the message? Who's the audience? And what are they hearing?
So he was essentially fired for having this relationship before you were on his life?
No, that's not correct. Basically, that's not in any way a violation of our standards of business conduct. The circumstances surrounding the relationship, we concluded that basically he used poor judgment and that impaired his ability to lead the company going forward.
Well, what were those circumstances that you don't penalize someone for having an affair? What did he do, presumably in this relationship, that compromised his family?
Well, we're just not going to disclose all those things. Just suffice it to say that there were some judgmental things there that worried the board, and we thought that would impair his ability to lead the company going forward. So,
Was there corruption involved?
no, not at all.
Is she still at the company?
To my knowledge, she certainly is, yes.
And she's welcome to stay at the company.
As far as I know, yes.
Do you know sort of if she was harassed or complained about her husband?
I think it's very clear that she was not. She was very cooperative during the investigation, as was Harry. Both the internal and external people who conducted the investigation said there was no indication of harassment, that this was a consensual relationship, and they were both very open about that.
All right, Mr. Bell, if I can continue with you. You are referred to as interim CEO. Does that mean that you are not interested or are not being considered to be the permanent CEO?
That's yes on both of your questions.
So you're not interested in that?
I'm pretty pleased with being the CFO, and I'm stepping in to help in the summer period, and I'm looking forward to getting back to my already job.
Mr. Bell, is it safe to say that had the company not had to endure some of the scandals that you've endured, that a man having an affair with a woman would not be enough to force his resignation?
Well, I think Lou said that it wasn't the affair that caused the board to ask for the resignation. It was the violation of our code of ethics.
Well, what is the code of ethics that was specifically violated?
I think you need to ask Lou that.
All right, Lou, let's see. What was the code of ethics that was violated here?
The ethics clearly states that we expect people will not engage in activities that would compromise the company in any way or would embarrass the company. And there were details surrounding this relationship that we thought would embarrass the company.
So Lou, this is not to say that someone who fools around on his wife or significant other he gets fired for the company. He must have done something beyond just this relationship that compromised your ethics.
That's correct. I mean, when you look at the CEO, you definitely hold the CEO to a higher standard. There's no question about that.
Yeah, the CEOs fool around. You know, they've been known to fool around. That wasn't the grounds for its dismissal. Specifically, what was?
Well, I understand CEOs fool around.
But he was there.
That was, I don't think it was a regret. I think he just got involved in a relationship. These things happen. I think he believes as strongly today in the code of ethics of the Boeing company as he did last week. But he got involved in something that it just happened.
So no secrets were exchanged or anything like that that would harken back to the defense scandals your company wrote?
Now, we are confident based on a very thorough investigation that there was nothing that was done that went beyond the borders of the company, that there was nothing done that will end up compromising us with the government or with any of our customers.
All right, let's start where they should have started in preparing for this interview. Who do you think was watching that was important to Boeing? Investors, yes, and financial, the analysts who watch the defense industry and commercial airline industry. Who else? Turn on your mic. Customers? Yep, big time, big time. All over Washington, D.C., probably in every government office, there are TVs on, maybe turned down, but at the Pentagon, they knew this was going to happen, this interview was coming on, or when they saw it, they turned it up. Okay, these are critical audiences. What are they hearing? What is the message they're getting? It's okay to have an affair at Boeing? Right. Well, then why was Harry fired? What did he do? Something worse than that. Okay, what could it be? What could it be? There was no coercion, no secrets traded hands. What was it's as clear as mud, isn't it? Okay, so what is the impression now among those audiences of what's going on in Boeing internally?
Something very bad.
Pardon me?
Something very bad.
Something very bad, or maybe covering up? Who's in control? And Lou doesn't want the job. If I played the whole interview, Lou didn't want to be CEO. He had been CEO of Hewlett-Packard at one time. And James Bell, who I don't know why he was even included in that, they put him in a bad position, but he should be able to tell you what the code of ethics is. The preparation for this is questionable, if at all, for this interview. What are your feelings? Should they have done the interview in the first place? Let's go back to just being asked to come on and do the interview. What would your advice be? Now, you know what? I would have handled it with a written statement. That's it. Email a statement out to them, and that's it. They created a lot of confusion and mixed perceptions about the company. Now, another audience is watching. Employees. What did they hear? Well, you say cover up. I hear that there may be more. As a result of that, there may have been more adultery going on at Boeing than ever before, because it was okay. The media are very incestuous, as you know. They watch each other, they quote each other. Say a Wall Street Journal reporter who was covering this story knew that this was going to be on Fox and was watching it to pick up any quotes. And certainly would give attribution to Fox, but can you think of any particular thing Lou said that the Journal might pick up and print?
I know CEOs have affairs.
Well, it's more like this. Now, why did he say that? Why in the world did he say that? Nobody forced him to. Cavuto said it, but there's no reason to repeat it. Absolutely none. There are, in dealing with the news media, there are only really two things that you can control. What you say, the words that cross your lips, and how you control yourself emotionally. Okay? People who tell you that you can control the interview, well, you're being misled. You don't know what the reporter, Cavuto could have been in a bad mood, they're on deadline, they may not like you for some reason. There are any number of things going on in their lives that you have no knowledge of and no control over. Control yourself, what you say and how you're reacting emotionally, and rehearse before you do it. Okay? Now, this goes back a way. Let me go back just a little here. Stephen Elop, you may recall, was CEO of Nokia, and that's since been merged. And I think Microsoft may have bought it, I think, and he went into the management system of Microsoft. But at the time, he had taken over Nokia. They were doing very poorly. And he was one of the first, if not the first, to choose the Windows format for his telephones. Okay? So I got an indication here. This video, it better play. I've tested it at home over and over again. I hope it plays because this is one of the nastiest interviews I've ever seen. And it's just the words that the reporter uses, Bill Griffith, back in New York. And let me just to explain the setup for you. Elop's on the West Coast. He's actually going to be interviewed by a CNBC reporter with the Pacific Ocean in the background. But Griffith wanted to do the first part of the interview. So he does. Let's see, I hope this works. Oh no, let me see here. Let me just check this out. Oh my goodness. Well, look at these are the parts of the question. Rapid erosion of your current business. Why should the stockholders, stay in there? At these prices, your phone business has no value. Why should anybody want to own your stock? Well, tough questions. And here's a guy who listened politely. What you don't see here is that his face was calm. He never lost his composure. And this was his answer. And it's very well done. And look how he handles the bad business, that business is bad. We're almost 150 years old. We've had our ups and downs, and we've always responded to them. Excellent answer to all of this. Really handled it well. Pardon me?
For those of us in the back, could you read the answer?
Yeah, it says, the reason to own Nokia stock today is to recognize Nokia in its 146-year history has repeatedly gone through these patterns of having great success. Market conditions change, and then we have to change course and execute even better. Very positive, not defensive. This is a great lesson in how to handle even the ugliest questions that you really don't want to be asked. Okay. You're familiar with Apple and the FBI? David Muir, ABC News anchor in the early evening news, had a 30-minute interview with Tim Cook at his office at Apple. And somebody pointed out yesterday that Bobby Kennedy bust in the background. And when they come to your office, you can really set the props up, by the way. Get your logo back there, if it's a TV interview, don't miss the opportunity to get your messages in a sublime way as well. Okay, it was a 30-minute interview. Now Cook knows he's not going to get all 30 minutes on the evening news, especially when it's only like a 22-minute newscast. So he had an overriding message with supporting messages peppered throughout his responses. And what I want to do, I've taken excerpts from about the first 10 minutes of this interview, because he knows only excerpts are going to get on the evening news. And listen for the consistency, and we'll break down on the supporting messages in each of these.
And we gave everything that we had. I wouldn't forward to that and volunteered engineers to help them and gave them numerous suggestions about how they might learn a lower cost case. But this case is not about the thumb. This case is about the future. What does it say here is, can the government compel Apple to write software that we believe would make hundreds of millions of customers vulnerable around the world, including the US, and also trample civil liberties that are the basic foundation of what this country was doing?   doing.
Message number one. We've cooperated with the FBI regarding this phone. This phone. That's important.
This is not about the goal. This is about the future. And what I've seen is people understand what is at stake here and increasing the number of support us. We have support from the politicians to the ones that drive the budget. I've had thousands of emails since this occurred, and the largest single category of people from the military. These are men and women who fight for our freedom and our liberty, and they want us to stand up and be accountable on this issue for them.
Okay, so he's getting a lot of support, but especially from the military. Overwhelming from the military. Protect us in that we can't give away information like this. Okay, so who's he talking to? Overall, who's his audience target in here? I'm sorry? Customers, right? Yeah, owners of iPhones? Yeah, big time. And potential owners of iPhones. And this is an evening newscast, so he has the access to millions of them, probably. Who else? Anybody else? Washington, yes. Especially those who are sympathetic with his position on this. Who else? There's another audience target here. Think about it. Who needs to ride on these coattails and who supported him in the industry? Look at it that way. Google? Yeah, other phone makers? I'm sorry? Yeah, talk in your mic because it's very hard to, okay. Silicon Valley, yeah, but especially in the encrypted arena. Okay? So, now.
The FBI is decided to use that phone to communicate this way, this compass. And I'm curious, you struggle at all with the possibility that there could be information on that phone that could reveal other plots, other people who were involved in planning this and revealing that. If we knew a way to get the information on the phone that we have already given, we knew a way to do this that would not expose hundreds of millions of other people issues, we would obviously do it. But again, this is not about the phone. This is about the future.
Okay, so one phone, okay, we can help them with. But if we open the Pandora's box, we're making all our customers vulnerable. Okay, now, whether you agree with what he's saying here is not important. What I want you to really look at is how he's structuring his messaging. Because there is one overriding messaging, and so far you've seen 3 examples of messages that support that overriding impression. Here's the next.
This is an incredible proposition, but it is about the future. Think about this. If a court compels Apple to write this piece of software, then to place a backdoor in the iPhone, we believe it does put hundreds of millions of customers at risk. In addition, if a court can ask us to write this piece of software, think about what else they can ask us to write. Maybe it's an operating system for surveillance. Maybe it's the ability for law enforcement to turn on the camera. I don't know where this stops, but I do know that this is not what should be happening in this country. This is not what should be happening in America. If there should be a law that compels us to do it, it should be passed out in the open, and the people of America should get a voice in that. The right place for that debate to occur is in Congress.
Okay, so it's really up to the people, not to the courts. So let's review these supporting messages. We've cooperated with that phone. The armed forces especially have come to our side because they understand if we go beyond one phone, we make all our customers vulnerable. Okay? And then it speaks specifically about those customers and then says this is not an issue for the courts. Congress, if it's going to go anywhere, it needs to go through Congress. Now, did you hear the overriding message? He mentioned it in all 4 sound bites here, that these messages support. Exactly. This is about the future. So he built his messaging very carefully. And every single answer in each of those sound bites said something like that, if not that specifically. It's really a brilliant development of messaging, and it comes off as very sincere. Again, if you don't, whether you agree or disagree is not important. This is all about structure. Yes, sir?
But the Apple stock has dropped 30%, and a lot of people attribute their stand to part of that.
That
There's other reasons for the 30%. That's one of the reasons that they attribute to the 30% drop in the stock.
Right, and also the lack of sales. I think they, so their stock has dropped. And again, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but it was structured very well. This was his messaging, not mine, and I thought he did a good job of delivering it. Now, did it have the benefit of helping his stock? Because that's what you look at when you get ready for an interview. In addition to defining your audience, who you're targeting, and what you want to say to them, one other step is very, very important, and I call it the ROI. What's the return on the interview? And this is not a message. This could be any number of things. It could be to improve your stock price, to improve your competitive advantage, to clear up misperceptions out in the marketplace. Any number of reasons why you're doing the interview. Because when you have a focus on why you're doing it, you have a better idea of how you're going to do it with your messaging, and you have a better chance of succeeding. Okay? So, any questions to this point? All right. So let me leave you with this.
Good morning, Dad. Thank you for coming. That was not super quick. Glad you left. Oh, nerves. I've never seen a psychologist. Good morning. It's 7 o'clock and I'm in class. Our first guest is psychologist Dr. Robert Cobb. It's considered being a psychologist is nothing more than a con man.
We won't be doing any more grabbing.
No, just talk.
3, 2, you're on.
Definitely. According to a recently published survey, the average fee for a private session with a psychologist is $40.
That's never mind.
Right. I don't think it's right. One other practitioner makes $40 an hour.
My arm.
Don't guarantee it'll work for you.
See, I don't understand why all of a sudden
I asked you if you guarantee it'll work.
I can't guarantee that each other is close to doors, but I'm sure.
You mean you ask $40 an hour and you guarantee nothing?
I don't know.
Is that yours? I was waiting for your answer.
All right. So now, questions? Any questions? Who has done media interviews? Nobody? Really? How did they miss you? Especially today, in the day of the internet. How do you feel about doing interviews with the media? Do you trust them? Okay, why not?
You just saw the example.
Which, the Bob Newhart example? That may be a little far-fetched, but
Directionally accurate.
you think it's accurate? Okay. Yes.
When you were talking to an audience, us executive level, what do you find is what people need the most and don't accept when you tell them?
What do I find people need the most but don't accept when I tell them? I'm going to rephrase that a little because it's more, what do I teach them that they have the most trouble with? And I have, and if you want my business card, you're welcome to it. I have what I call the 10 rules of interviewing. It's on the back of my card. And rule number 4 is, an interview is not a conversation. It is a message delivery environment. Now, that doesn't mean it's open for spin or evasion, and I purposely avoid working with politicians because they're notorious about that. But once you get into a conversation mode, and it's very easy to fall into it, it takes a real discipline, you will find yourself, when you get a question you don't like or you feel is wrong, you become defensive, maybe argumentative, and maybe start debating, and everything you're doing at that point is counterproductive to getting positive, persuasive messages across to target audiences. The person interviewing you is not your target audience. He or she is the conduit to your target audience. And an audience, in my definition, is an individual or groups of people who have common issues or share common things with you, and they can help you reach your business goals. Any other questions? Anything else? All right, well, thank you very much.